What's up, world? This is Maxwell 3000 Productions. I am Maxwell 3000. I want to welcome you back to Family Talk. Pops, how you doing today?
Doing pretty good. Doing pretty good. Had a good rain last night. I think first rain we've had all month.
Did y'all have a good rain?
Yeah, I'm thinking this morning my okra starting to come up and a few other things. So yeah.
I didn't really have a good rain. We had a kind of a light drizzle here and there. I've got some stuff popping up as well, though. Um, Last week when we talked, we really went through your time in Maryland, and I wanted to kind of revisit that a little bit. Can you remind me again the community where y'all lived? What city or town you lived in Maryland?
It was Aberdeen Proving Ground. I think the community was maybe Aberdeen, but we or maybe Edgewood because I was actually on Edgewood Arsenal, which was part of the bigger Aberdeen Proving Ground complex. All that's Army stuff.
Yeah.
And I think the actual uh, where we lived at in the apartment was maybe Edgewood.
Okay. And you said y'all went to church up there and even taught some Sunday school. Do you remember what church you went to?
I was thinking it was like Maple something Baptist Church. Uh,
And was that just kind of the closest
yeah,
Baptist church that was around?
yeah,
Is that what you had primarily the flavor of Christianity you had been exposed to
yeah,
at that point?
yeah.
Um, is there anything else you want to tell us about the time there or that experience in the community or at the church? You talked a lot about the technical aspect of your training, and we could spend a lot of time talking about weapons and different applications and stuff like that, but might not get maybe to the real experience of your time up there. Is there anything else you'd want to share?
No, it was really kind of a short period. Really a lot of training, military schools, and that was pretty much it.
Yeah. And so you wrap that up, what, right at the end of 77, towards the end of
Yeah, it'd be about
77?
right. 77, 78, maybe 78.
Right there, maybe at the beginning of 78?
Yeah, because I started law school in the fall of 79. So
Right.
that, yeah,
I remember you said that. Um, and so coming back to Middle Tennessee, that is, you said you got a house in Smyrna. Now, did you pretty much already have a job lined up with Granddad to go to work whenever you came back? Was that kind of one of those things that was just, if I didn't have nothing else going on, Granddad get me a job and I'd go to work doing
right.
something?
Yeah, pretty
Is
much.
that kind of the situation?
Yeah.
And you had mentioned that my mother kind of started working with the state pretty soon after y'all got back,
Yeah.
right?
That's my recollection. Yeah.
Okay. Tell me about the place y'all got in Smyrna. When was that? Was that pretty quick, or did you stay somewhere else before then, or did you have that place lined up coming in from Maryland?
It was pretty quick. One of the advantages of a veteran has is the VA benefits. So getting a loan for a house was not a problem because I was a veteran. I mean, you didn't have to have a down payment or anything like that. So there was no reason not to buy, uh, rather than just rent. And so it was pretty nice. It was 111 Matt Nickel Drive, I believe it was, but it was just a block or two across away from the old high school where I went to high school.
Okay.
I think
Okay.
it may be a middle school now, but yeah.
What made you go to Smyrna?
Uh, this location. I mean, it was close to Lebanon. Mom and dad in Laverne. Brother in Smyrna. Relatives, and that was just a good, easy place to get. More than likely, your mother picked it out. So
Well, I didn't know since you maybe figured you were going to be working with Granddad. I didn't know what that situation was like or where y'all might have the central location y'all might have worked from, or if you might have needed to be get
yeah,
with
well, that
him.
too, because in Middle Tennessee area, the construction was booming at that time. Um, and I think my first job uh, coming back into construction was building a bowling alley in somewhere in I don't even somewhere in Nashville, uh, and it was you know you live and learn. I didn't know, but putting together a lane for a bowling alley is work. I mean,
Yeah,
it's got to be perfect, and
yeah.
and so that was a good job, good learning experience, and that lasted probably the spring '79. Uh,
In
you, you
'78,
know,
in '78, right? It lasted that long. You said that was probably one of the first jobs you had coming back.
yeah, that would not yet have been the winter, spring of '79. 'Cause I started law school in '79. Yeah, I didn't start the law school until like September,
Right.
and then finished that job up and got on worked at the nuclear plant there in Hartsville. Uh, and I did that pretty much the first year in law school. I would go up there and work and rush and clean up and go to class, and that was life. That was it.
Well, so back up a little bit. When did you decide to apply for law school, and what was that process like? Because I got you getting back to Middle Tennessee basically at the beginning of '78. So you got a whole year um, before you'll even get to the the '79 and starting into '79. So when did you decide to apply for law school? Did you apply to multiple places, and what was that process like?
Well, yeah, it was in that time frame that I applied for law school and got accepted there
At
in
Nashville
Nashville.
School of Law?
Yeah,
Did
and
you
that
apply anywhere else?
not really because I didn't have the money to do a whole lot with, and I could go to the Nashville School of Law and the GI benefits I had would help me live off of if I didn't have a job, and
Okay.
so uh, and I got it accepted there first thing. I mean, it's first the only place I applied, and I got accepted there. And I think I probably mentioned this to you, but I'm pretty well convinced that it was a veteran's preference because I'm just an average intelligent person. You
Yeah. And that was it was a night school, correct? It was night.
Yeah,
It was only night school, right? Is that right, or did it ever
correct.
have?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And so what did you have to take any entrance exam, or was there an application? Was there any interview process to that? I know,
Yeah, well,
like, so the go ahead.
you had to take the LSAT, the law school uh, standard admittance test. That everybody that goes to any law school takes that. Uh,
What was your
I had
recollection
to,
of that?
my recollection was it was more logic stuff than it was really intellect. Um, and that did not seem difficult to me.
Is that something that you studied for?
Uh, there is probably a seminar you can do, but I did not.
Okay. So you didn't really prep for it at all?
No, took the LSAT test, and then they had you submit the school had you submit some writing samples, uh,
Okay.
and and you know somewhat, I guess, kind of like a resume, but what your background was, what your intent was, and that kind of
Yeah.
stuff.
Okay. What did you think about that whole experience? Was that new to you? Was that something that you had kind of done in the past? What did you think about all that?
Well, I was surprised at the LSAT because I was thinking it would be more. Uh, I would have thought my political science, constitutional law, those kind of classes that I had would be more prevalent, but it wasn't. It was, like I said, it was logic type stuff, and so I don't know how you prepare for that. So
Hmm.
I just did it. Um, I, I was surprised that I got accepted so quickly because I'd heard that there was like a year waiting to get in, and so when I got the notice I was accepted, I said, well, that's you know kind of pumped me up.
Yeah.
I was working construction and thinking, well, this is going to be a while, and that early acceptance had got me. They had to, okay, I'm going to work this construction or whatever I need to do to get through law school, but this ain't how I'm going to end up. Is so yeah,
Yeah.
it pumped me up.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Well, and let me go back a little bit because at that same time, you have to get signed up with this reserve component of the military to serve the rest of your contract.
Yeah, and that was the Tennessee Army National Guard.
Yeah, and so how long did you have when you got back? Was it like 3 months, 6 months, within a year? How long did you have to get signed up with this when you came back?
Here's my understanding of what the process was supposed to be, and this is not what happened to me, but what the process is once you get released from regular Army duty, you get a notice, uh, generally in the mail. You're assigned to this reserve unit, uh, and you're told to
According to
show up.
your job, right?
Yeah. But I didn't do that because, like I think I mentioned to you earlier, I met General Carl Wallace when I first came back, and just a very good. Uh, I felt like a friendship, mentorship kind of guy to me, and he got me into the Tennessee Army National Guard just almost immediately.
Okay, yeah, and so you mentioned um, my papa, your father-in-law, was involved in the American Legion. Now, what is the American Legion? What can you tell me about that organization in general? Anything?
It's a veterans organization, and pretty much anybody that's been honorably discharged from the military can be in the American Legion. Different from the veterans of foreign wars. In the veterans of foreign war, you have to have actually been deployed out of the country. But the American Legion is for fundamentally any veteran. And during and after World War II, the American Legion was very politically active in the United States. And because of the American Legion, a lot of the Veterans Benefits Acts went through Congress. They sponsored a lot of. They were kind of a pack, I guess you'd call them.
An advocacy group.
Yeah.
Yeah, political action committee, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, and so my papa, who was a veteran of World War II in the Pacific Theater, um, was involved in that around Lebanon,
Correct.
basically, and he said, "Hey, you should come be involved in this too."
Well, he didn't even say that. I mean, he just there was a fish fry that I
Yeah,
remember.
oh, just a community event.
and he's come on and go with us, and we did, and I did get involved in it somewhat. I joined it, but I don't think I ever felt like that was a requirement.
Yeah, no, or, yeah, and I don't think I meant it like that, but just that he was involved in it, and there was this a community event, a fish fry, and probably said, "Hey, I got some extra tickets, y'all come on," type of
Yeah,
deal, right?
yeah, yeah.
All right, and at the fish fry, you meet. Say that again.
Carl Wallace, who
Carl
was
Wallace.
2-star general. I didn't know that he was a 2-star general. He was in civilian clothes when I met him, and talking, and then when I found out later on that evening that he was a 2-star general, I was like, "Whoa, this is important."
Yeah. And so you kind of built a rapport with him, and you said he owned the Lebanon Democrat, which is probably why he was at the American Legion function, and a
Yeah.
few other newspapers in the Middle Tennessee area. I think you mentioned Waverly and somewhere else. I don't recall.
I'm thinking
Um,
maybe Winchester, but there were a few. Yeah.
okay. And so that's kind of why he was there. And what did y'all just kind of start talking about Army stuff? How did that
I'm I'm
happen?
I'm sure. I don't remember exactly, but I'm sure that Jim, Marie's dad, introduced me to him, and hey, Wayne just got out and la la la, and as a result of that introduction, he and I got to talking, and uh, he gave me his card and said, "Hey, contact me, and I'll get you into a guard unit if you want to do that." And
Hmm.
yeah, yeah,
Well, that's interesting, huh? Because I know my papa, and he didn't prep you for that at all. He didn't say, "Hey, this person might be here, and this would be a good look for your kind of military career and stuff like that."
not really, no.
Pretty convenient.
Yeah, and he may have had that in his mind. I did not. It did not get conveyed to me like that.
Pretty convenient. So, and as a result of this, you kind of your assignment fell within the National Guard. And so I've got a couple of questions, and you mentioned it earlier about how you were going to get a notice from the Army saying this was your reserve post, and it would have to do with the job that you had just trained for. Is that a good assumption?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay, and so now with this connection, instead of an Army Reserve unit, you're going to be in a National Guard component. Talk to me about the difference between an Army Reserve unit and a National Guard unit.
Well, the National Guard is first and primarily a state militia, and it can be federalized, which we were several times. I mean, you remember the Desert Storm, and so that's just a stroke of the pen, and all of a sudden the National Guard unit becomes a federal unit. If you're just in a regular Army Reserve unit, you don't need that stroke of the pen. You're already part of there. So.
Is there any kind of difference in the leadership hire? I mean, obviously, it goes to the governor is the maybe commander in chief of the national. Would that be accurate to say?
Yeah, yeah.
In the way that the president is of the army. Um,
Because if the president strikes that stroke of the pen, all of a sudden it's coming out of the guard, out of the governor's realm into
right.
yeah.
And so the National Guard, are they attached to any particular army unit? Are there different? Talk to me how that works. That relationship. Tell me more about that relationship.
Yeah, well, the first National Guard unit I was in was the 777 Maintenance Company in Nashville, Tennessee, and the maintenance company was aligned with uh, pretty sure Seventh Corps, which was in Central Europe, and so we had state uh, missions, and we would train and do stuff with other state units, but also had an alignment with the Seventh Corps in Central Europe. There
So it
was one
almost
time. There was one time we got activated to go to a military um, train event in Central Europe when I was in the maintenance company, and so we get all of our men, we go on a plane, we go to Central Europe, spend 2 or 3 weeks over there doing the job. Uh, Part of the job that we were doing was to find out where there was already pre-positioned equipment for us that was designated for us, so we didn't have to bring all the equipment. That we had a lot of equipment as a maintenance unit would. So we didn't have to bring all of our equipment from Nashville, Tennessee to Central Europe. We had equipment already pre-positioned. So to know where that was and to be able to utilize that and get into terrain, that was a big part of that. Great experience. Some of my really neat experiences in Europe were with a maintenance company. And at that time, I was a platoon leader for the electronics platoon out of the maintenance company.
okay. And so you said it was the a maintenance company out of Nashville. And so after the relationship with General Wallace kind of started, and you even say it was like a mentorship type relationship. Did you get a notice then? The notice came that your assignment was to this company in
Yeah, and
Nashville.
that was the wonderful thing about knowing General Wallace is, I went to visit him at his headquarters in Nashville, and so he got his people to do all the paperwork and stuff to
Yeah,
get me out of the reserve unit into the National Guard, and that just went smoothly.
yeah, okay. Um, and so a maintenance company, maintenance just seems like a broad term. Narrow that down for me. What were y'all maintaining?
All right, and in a company there are different platoons, and platoon is a smaller group, and they had different functions in a maintenance company. My platoon was electronics, so anything with radios, anything like that that had electronics, that's what we fixed. What we did, we had the equipment to do it, and really smart people. I had a warrant officer that, well, on paper he worked for me, but I really worked for him because he knew what he was doing. And Mr. Barnhill, just one of the most intelligent guys I ever been around, a good guy. He was the one that really ran the shop in regards to the maintenance. The way it worked out as far as the military, we had to, be prepared to defend ourselves and all that kind of. That was kind of sort of my function in that is as the officer, and then you had all the other men that worked in there. That was one platoon. We had another platoon in there that worked on big equipment, for example, tanks, uh, big trucks, 2.5 ton truck. We had a lot of men, a lot of equipment. It was a big unit and had a real time mission, very important. Another unit was another one of the platoons was, I forget what it was called, but it's like fabric. If anything maintained with tents, that kind of stuff, they did that. Um, and there was some smaller like Jeeps and those kind of vehicles that were not the tanks, but the big trucks, but other small uh, platoons. So I think we're 4 or 5 platoons. We were self sufficient. We had our own mess hall. Uh, Everything you needed to survive, we had. Uh, that was a neat unit. There was also a detachment from that company in Murfreesboro, and they did heavy maintenance and that sort of stuff. When we go to summer camp, I never will forget. I had to lead the convoy out of Nashville to Fort Stewart, Georgia. It's over on the coast near Savannah. And so when we left Nashville, we had vehicles strung out on the interstate all the way from the other side of Chattanooga, which would have been in Georgia, to Nashville. That's how long
Yeah.
the convoy was. We had a lot of stuff.
Yeah. And a lot of people, sounds
Yeah,
like, too.
yeah.
That's interesting. And so your job was in the electronics kind of division, platoon. Um, that doesn't really have much to do with the school you went to, does
Not,
it?
not a thing in the world.
Okay.
other other than in any military unit, so nuclear, biological, and chemical warfare is an issue that every soldier has to be trained in. And so, one of my extra duties was that guy in the company that made sure that happened. But I had to go through some cross training, and it was correspondence work to get qualified in the electronics.
Yeah. Okay.
And the Army, particularly in the reserve unit, you will change jobs and career fields a lot. Maybe not so in the regular Army, but if you're going to maintain a career in a reserve unit, you got to be flexible.
Yeah, and I would imagine, and you alluded to this a couple of times. I mean, you said that y'all were self-sufficient, right? And that the application, particularly, of the chemical warfare, is applicable to all wartime entity. So it's kind of like, okay, well, it checks that box for our unit to have this guy, you know,
Yeah,
yeah, right.
yeah,
Um, and being self sufficient, right? We've got somebody for everything. Maybe he doesn't do that all the time, but he's also got this expertise, so he checks this other box for us.
yeah, yeah.
That's interesting. So, and now that happened pretty quick when you get back. I mean, you had a responsibility to do that, and I guess for this changeover, really had this special situation worked out for you to transfer into the National Guard unit. That kind of had to, things had to get rolling on that pretty early to make it happen, right? In
Yeah.
time for you to uphold your obligations. What were your what was your obligations to the National Guard unit? Like,
It was one weekend every month, and then 2 weeks in the summer.
okay. And so what does that weekend look like?
Generally, show up on Saturday morning, and most of the time we'd work a regular. We would probably be there 10, 12 hours. Then I could go home or wherever you wanted. I was living there, so I could go home and then come back Sunday and do it all over again. And what was a really good thing about that unit is that that was not only did they have a part-time weekend mission, but they had a full mission 24/7. And so uh, a number of the guys that were in that unit were also full-time employees for the National Guard.
Okay.
So yeah, it was a great experience for any soldier because the weekenders would come in and would just work on stuff that they would normally work on.
Okay.
Now, there would be some times throughout the year where we'd go to the field, we'd convoy to some place and set up camp, in the field and set up shop in the field and had to defend and do the soldiering thing. But probably 75% of the time was come in and do their job.
Okay.
I think that was a good recruiting because the guys loved that unit.
Yeah. Mhm. Okay. So you start getting into that, and you kind of you're doing that, and then you're also working in construction, and living in Smyrna.
Yeah.
Where are y'all going to church at then?
Uh, we went back to Laverne First Baptist.
Okay. Kind of your home church.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Mm. So it seems like kind of the next step is going into law school. Would that be right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And that, the tough part about that first year was tough because you think of it, you're getting your mind set into law school, which is a different mindset than college, and that whole idea of doing that. Plus, I'm working construction, which is not an easy thing to do, and so getting that going, and all of a sudden, your oldest sister comes along in December of '79.
Yeah, it's a lot going on right there.
And so I had to admit, I just thought, well, I got this baby. I probably need to drop out of law school and support this. That's was my mindset. And your mother encouraged me not to do that.
Hmm. That's cool. That's cool. Well, hey, let's take another break right here and let's pick up on you kind of being accepted into law school and what jobs you're working on in the civilian world and kind of gearing up to prepping for the fall in law school.
Yeah, because I'm gonna tell you that there's a lot of very fortunate things happened to me right around that time when your sister was born, and that's a story in itself.
All right, that sounds great. Appreciate it. Well, hey, this is Maxwell 3000 Productions. I am Maxwell 3000. Peace and love.